Okay, we're going to continue to work on the spreadsheet we developed for learning about how to use Excel as an analytical tool for Engineering 1 class. The next part we're going to do actually goes back to actually no, I take that back. The next thing we're going to do is continue to kind of investigate how you do this grid here, because for a lot of people, the first time they do this, they kind of get it, but they're not sure. And so what we want is some sort of lesson on that involves one set of figures going across the top of a page and another set of figures going down the side of the page, and then production of values inside that are functions of those two indices on the sides there. And so one such thing that's good for that is body mass index, BMI. Now, very briefly, I just want to emphasize, because I think this is important. Anytime you talk about body mass, you get into body image issues, and I don't want to make anybody uncomfortable or obsessive about body image issues. The only reason I'm choosing BMI is it's a fairly familiar thing that has two axes that you work on. There'll be weight and height is basically what it'll be, and you calculate BMI from that. One of the things I want to say about BMI is it's one measure of health. It does not tell you how beautiful you are, or how smart you are, or how flexible you are, or how good you are at shooting hoops. Or it tells you nothing about a person. It doesn't tell you how good or generous they are. It's one measure of health, and even then, it's not. It doesn't tell you everything about the health of a person. You can have a person who has a perfect BMI, and if they have uncontrolled diabetes, they could be terribly, terribly sick, or incipient cancer. Right? These things, you can't really take one way of measuring one thing about a person and make that big a deal about it. So I just feel obligated to throw that out there so that people feel comfortable with us doing the BMI thing here. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to make a brand new sheet. Come down here. There's a plus sign here. You click that. That generates a new blank sheet. I'm going to zoom in a little bit because it's a little easier for me to see when I do that. And so, as I said, BMI is a function of two variables. Now, I'm actually going to come down here. See here, let's go to B4 to start this rather than right up near the top. And you'll find I typically leave some room to the left and above on my spreadsheets, because often I'll discover I need to put some other value in there or more information, and I might put it above or to the left of it. So I always kind of come down and over a little bit. In this case, I'm starting B4. And so BMI is a function of weight, and that's usually expressed in kilograms, and we're going to put those values moving down in this axis. Similarly, it's a function of height. That will be expressed in meters, and that goes across this way. Now, a good starting weight for us to work with is 50 kilograms. We're going to make that a parameter so that we can change that value to look at different combinations of weights and heights. And we're going to have this decrease by 1 kilogram at a time as we move along here. I'm going to change that later, but for now, let's just do decreasing by 1 kilogram as we go down this way. This is very similar to the multiple choice thing. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I want to increase by 1. I don't want to get lighter than 50. I want to go up. Now, I want to point out, this will happen to you. You'll write an equation, you'll drag it down, you'll realize there's an error, you'll fix it, and then it still won't be working right. Why is this not looking right? It's 50, 51, and back down to 50. Because I did not take my repaired formula and copy it down. So be careful about that. Make sure that if you edit a formula, you then drag it to everywhere you want it to be. Very common mistake. I have this, shows up all the time on tests. A student will make an error in a formula. They'll change it in one cell, but they'll neglect to take that and propagate it to the remainder of the cells. So be aware of that error that happens. And I'm glad I made that error because it gave me a chance to teach you that little thing. So height, we're going to start with 1.5 meters, which actually isn't that short. That's about 5 feet tall. And we're going to turn that into another parameter. And here again, we're going to go increasing. In this case, let's increase by 0.1 meters at a time, which is still 10 centimeters. It's not nothing. And we'll drag that across this way. So yeah, somebody who's 2 meters tall is a very tall person. But just numbers to start with, not a big deal. So BMI is calculated, and another thing I'll point out, when I'm writing for a grid like this, I almost never start in the upper left-hand corner. I always start down here, because if you start in the upper left-hand corner, you're going to be referring to this cell twice and this cell twice sometimes, and that can be confusing. So instead, I come down here. So here, if somebody had a weight of 53 kilograms and a height of 1.7 meters, the way you calculate BMI is the weight of the person divided by the height of the person squared, when the weight is expressed in kilograms and the height is in meters. So that's the right formula. If I hit that, I get this display. Now, the way BMI is calculated, they actually always round it off to only 1 decimal place. So I'm coming up here and editing my display decimal place. So 1 decimal place is the accuracy of the BMI calculations. Every value you get will be based on that. Now, as before, this equation works for this cell, but if we drag it up or over, we're going to get errors, and that's because these need to have some dollar signs in them. So we're not going to be dragging it up or over until we fix that. So we got to put the dollar signs in there, make sure these are absolute references. And this is pretty easy. The top is the blue one. That's your weight. Those are always going to be in column B. So we got to put the dollar sign before the B. All right, most likely it stopped recording. Oh, maybe it kept recording. I'll have to edit something out. So I need to put a dollar sign in there so that the B remains constant. And then over here, the height will always be on row 4, never on row 3 or row 2. So I got to change this to have a dollar sign in there for the 4. And so now when I click this and drag it up or over, doesn't matter whether I drag it left or right here. And in the last video, I talked about how this works for dragging these things. And so this puts all the values in here. Now, here's an interesting thing. This formula, B9 plus 1, as you can see, is different from any of these formulas, which are all those. But you can actually still collect the whole row like this and drag it downward, and you can continue to make this operate. So you can copy more than what you necessarily had visible there. And it also would work if you did sideways, including the top one, because this formula could be dragged down, and this formula works dragging sideways. So as long as you're not dragging this one sideways or dragging this one up and down, it'll operate properly. It'll calculate them. Now, the next thing I want to say about this is I intentionally expanded that because, as it turns out, there are 3 key numbers in evaluating body mass index, BMI. They are 18. When your body mass index is below 18, that is considered underweight. The next number is 25, and I'm putting these key numbers up here because I'm going to use them in a minute, but I'm putting them up so you don't forget them. 25 is the upper end of what they call normal. So 18 to 25, between these two values, that's a normal BMI. 30 is the next number on the BMI evaluation, and that's if you're above 25 up to 30, and I'm in this range actually, the 25 to 30 range. That's called overweight. I'm just past 25, so I think I have a chance to get myself back down there, but I don't have to watch what I eat and become a little more active. Anyway, 25 to 30, that's overweight. And then above 30 is the last category, and that's called obese. And obese is a word that's been used by people for lookism, to talk about people's appearances, and it's really inappropriate. It actually refers to a medical condition that does deserve some analysis. If you're above 30, you should talk to your doctor about what you could do to try to be a little healthier, because when you're above 30, that is going to have long-term health effects. So I encourage you to look into it. Likewise, if you're below 18, again, not a healthy condition, and you should talk to your doctor and see what you can do about that. But it doesn't make you a bad or good person. So the reason that I extended this down to 60 here is because if you look, I have plenty of values here that are below 18 because a 6 foot tall person, six and a half feet tall, who only weighs 50 kilograms is actually really slender. But there's no 30s on here. So I'm going to actually change my start value here. I'm going to change this to 60 and make sure we get the full range on here now. And you can see just changing that one parameter was sufficient to change the whole page. So I have some values under 18 and I have some values above 30. And that's helpful for the next part of my lesson. But before I do that, I'm actually going to end the video and then go to the next part of the lesson on here. I'm going to go down here and rename this BMI. And what we're going to look at next is a way to get this to automatically color code according to underweight, normal, overweight, and obese. So that's our next lesson, and we'll get to that in just a moment.